event in the recently launched Thought Leadership Series being held in commemoration of Wangari Maathai's 80th birthday. We are building on her legacy and on how she's touched so many people across the world. And what we're trying to do is have frank conversation about the leadership that's required in this century, in this decade, in this critical moment where it seems all of society needs people to step up. And the series is brought to you by the Wangari Maathai Foundation and Greenbelt Movement International. Many of you likely know the great work that the foundation is doing, but those of you who are new, it's dedicated to really championing the legacy of Wangari Maathai through developing courageous and responsible leadership amongst children and youth, which is a big task and really hard to do. We've spoken about this earlier in the series, about how this leadership is built through social and emotional competencies, enabling self-development and collective action in the new generation. My name is Salina Abraha, and I've had the pleasure of being a panelist in the first fireside chat. It was held back in September, and I'm even more honored to be your moderator today. So in this last segment, we spoke very broadly on youth leadership, acknowledging that young people are no longer waiting to be asked to take up leadership. They're stepping up, they're taking their space. We spoke about the need to recognize how youth are shaping today and not just tomorrow. We talked about the need to not just talk about the challenges that youth are facing, but to recognize the solutions that they're bringing to the table. And one crucial aspect of that conversation was the need for young people to have platforms for expression, that they're asking for opportunities. And one question that we were left with at the end of that conversation was, how do we get more platforms to support young people? And also to get more young people to create more platforms. So that is what we want to dive into today. I am so grateful. We have an incredible panel. I'm very honored to be able to be holding this space today. And what I want to do quickly is introduce you all to this panel. And then I'll share with you the next steps in terms of how you can submit your questions and how we'll host this conversation today. So first, I want to introduce Wawira Jiru, who is the founder of Food for Education. She is a Kenyan businesswoman, entrepreneur, human nutritionist, and philanthropist who serves as the executive director of Food for Education. And this is an organization that cooks, prepares, and distributes nutritious meals at subsidized prices to over 2,000 school children from humble backgrounds in Ruiru, a suburb of Nairobi. Thank you so much for being with us today. Next up, we have Chineyenwa Okoru Onu from Accra, Ghana. Chineyenwa has founded and led 3 organizations, all of which support the development of disruptive entrepreneurs to find solutions for Africa's development. These organizations are Waster Create Hub, Startup Africa Network, which is Africa's fastest growing authentic startup enabling environment with over 300 startups. Thank you so much for that. And The Enabler. So thank you, Chineyenwa. Looking forward to hearing from you. And next we have Florian Reber, who is the community lead at 1t.org at the World Economic Forum. He's a sustainability strategist with substantial experience in developing global public-private partnerships and coalitions, an entrepreneurial mind, systems thinker, and an outdoors enthusiast, here to tell us about how the World Economic Forum is joining this space. Thank you so much, Florian. And last but not least, we have Michael Wayaki, founder of Midi Alliance Kenya. Michael is an environmentalist fighting to slow down the devastating effects of climate change due to deforestation by planting millions of trees and educating a future generation of environmentalists. A very inspiring and diverse group. Thank you, Michael, for being here. And before I invite our panelists to answer the first question, I want to remind you, our audience, that we want to see your thoughts, your comments, your encouragement in the chat. So please do use it as we go. I know it's hard in the virtual world. If we were all in one room, we would hear clapping, people would be nodding, a few sounds of encouragement. So since we don't have that, this chat is our collective form of expression, and it'll be nice to hear you as we move throughout the session. We also have a dedicated Q&A, so do think about what you want to ask our participants, and we'll pick those up in that section. All right, I feel like I'm talking a lot, so I'm now going to hand the floor to our esteemed panelists. The question I have first is one that I want each of the panelists to answer. And it essentially sticks to the fact that today our conversation revolves around young people who are creating opportunities for other young people to thrive. We want to know, what did it take each and every one of you, to get your ideas and your passion off of the ground. What is your story, and how has that helped create opportunities for other young people to flourish and to shine? And I'd like to ask Chinenwa to maybe share with us what that was like. What's your story? How did you get to founding 3 organizations? The floor is over to you.
Thank you so much, Celine. And hello, everyone that is joining from all across the world. Thank you all for making time to join us. I think this question that you've asked is very, very important. And every single day when I wake up and I do the things that I love to do, I keep asking myself, how did I get here? The kind of community and support system I have developed all over, and I just keep asking myself, how did I get here? Because it still feels like a dream to me. I wasn't one of those people that just wake up and set up to be an entrepreneur and wanting to found organizations, enable people. No, I was one of these people who just wanted to go to school, get a job in some cool corporation, and retire and just live my life. But that journey changed for me when I came to Ghana for the first time. I came, in search of education. I'm originally Nigerian, and coming to Ghana changed a lot of things for me. Perspective. I got to meet some very awesome young people, and I've always just been a curious mind. So I was asking myself, what am I going to do to make my difference? Because it's one thing to leave your home country and come to another country. It's another thing to make a mark, make an impact, be known and acknowledged for your success in that different country. So what did I do? I joined an entrepreneurship organization called Enactus. It's quite popular, and we have quite a number of institutions like universities that have Enactus campuses. And that was where my entrepreneurship journey started. And I never looked back from then. I fell in love with not just enabling people, I fell in love with environment. I fell in love with wanting to be beyond my person and to be someone who wants a purpose for others. I fell in love in the African dream, the whole self-reliancy for Africa, by Africans, for Africans. And yeah, this is it. I don't know what else to say, but I just think that it's beyond just wanting to be just that person. I just wanted to be something. I just wanted to be someone that people in my community and where I come from could look up to and be like, yeah, I could be like Chi someday. And it's happening, and every day it's overwhelming, but it's really, really exciting.
I love it. Thank you. We can tell that the passion was sparked inside of you, and I think that's what I've always noticed. That seed is the most important part, and then everything else slowly begins to fall into place. So yeah, I'm sure people have I have many follow-up questions, but I will get into this soon. So I want to hand it over to Michael to share a bit of, where did your passion come from? What's your story? What did it take for you to really create your own space?
Thank you, Selena. I think mine stemmed out in my early years. I found this picture in an old album, and my dad took a picture of me with an avocado tree somewhere on our yard. And I think I lost that patch of life. And later in my 20s, I joined a Rotaract club in Nairobi and was super active. Only did I know that I'd be asked to be president of the club, and later was requested by the World Economic Forum to join one of the communities. And what led me there, or what led me to finding who I was and what I wanted to do, was, I was tree planting. I was involved in so many environmental activities. And the more I spent time in the environment, the more I felt a sense of self, a sense of belonging, a sense of purpose. And, the exposure with the World Economic Forum and coming back and really diving into the world of renewable energy. So I traveled across the country, and I think I saw so many of the counties, and I realized every school I went to did not have sufficient number of trees, or didn't have water, or didn't have the kind of facilities. And I felt it was like a call to actually do it. But really what drove me to really understanding where this has come from is a video of Wangari Maathai when she was in Karura and they were pulling off her hair. And she says, we're going to fight for Karura, and we're going to fight for its protection. And we won't let the work that Wayaki did to go to waste. And I'm like, why did she say Wayaki? And I started searching, and I realized that one of my great grandfathers, like I don't know how many great before me, but was fighting for the environment. And I realized that's why I've gone and worked for so many years in other things and still come back to my first love, the environment, the outdoors. And yeah, and that's how Meteor Alliance was born in 2018. And yeah, it's just diving in, no matter how hard or how challenging, no funding, but just keep going, just keep doing your little bit for the environment. Thank you.
Wow, that's so powerful. What an incredible kind of ancestry and the sense of purpose that I guess is passed through generations. That's incredible. Yeah, wow. What we'd love to hear from you. What did your story look like?
So thank you so much, and I'm so honored to be on this panel and to be speaking to everyone who's joining in. So my story starts, from Kenya, kind of growing up here and seeing how lots of kids I was growing up with. So I grew up in an area where, my parents would work really hard to take us to a little private school, versus my friends who I was playing with in the area didn't have access to the kind of education that I had. Even if we didn't have running water in the house, we were better off because we had 3 meals and things like that. And so I grew up kind of with a sense of disparity where if, you're thinking I'm not privileged because I don't have running water, there's someone else who doesn't have, for example, access to food, and seeing how that impacted, especially the children, and as we got into adulthood, how it impacted them because they weren't able to go to school every day, the kind of opportunities they got in life. And so I was studying a degree in nutrition and food sciences. And actually, I watched a video. It's so funny how all of us have a linkage to Wangari Maathai. When I was in uni, I obviously knew about Wangari Maathai, but had never actually sat down to research her work. And I watched Taking Root for the first time, and the message around, doing the little thing that you can, and also what she went through to fight for the environment in Kenya. And my passion was kids having access to food. And so I said, if she went through all that and fought for the environment and essentially won at the end, I thought, my little thing is feeding kids. And so I started, the organization that we work with, Food for Education, with just the same notion of, this is my little thing. This is the little thing that I can do. And so we started by feeding, 25 children a day, and currently provide to around 30,000 children every single day. And it's grown massively with still the same mentality of this is my little thing, even if now it's a bigger thing, but it's still the little thing that I can do. And persistence is really what it's taken to get here, which I think is echoed among the speakers and also through the life of Wangari Maathai, the persistence to fight for something you believe in and to kind of see a vision and work to fulfill it.
Thank you. Thanks for touching on the persistence aspect. I'm sure we're going to get into this even more in the rest of the conversation. But before that, I'd like to hand to Florian.
Thank you, Selina. And thank you, all of you. It's really great. It's an honor, and I'm humbled to be part of this panel. Chineyeno, you made me smile before what you said. I really can relate to that so much. 12 years ago, so when I came out of university, I would never have thought that, I would now find myself in this position where we are working on forest conservation, also creating platforms and youth globally to engage. I came out of school, started work, a job which I thought was a good job, but because we have a certain understanding what maybe a good job is. But I think a couple of things that I follow through on my journey is starting to really listen to my gut feelings, starting to listen to my own needs. And I think one need I discovered having is that need for inspiration and leadership. So I left situations where I didn't find that leadership, and I stuck or came back to situations where I was blessed to have that type of leadership. And a third element for me was just to be bold and take risks. So we talk about passion. also maybe until very recently, I think I didn't understand the word passion. And so the Latin roots of this word goes back to the verb to suffer, and to be really ready to suffer for what you like. I always thought being passionate about something is to be, you know, really like an activity and invest time into it, but it's actually this, you know, willingness to suffer for something. And I've always been passionate about the outdoors. You know, at university, I always wanted to spend a lot of time out in the mountains, and you know, playing music was my other big passion, which at some point I had to let go to focus on other things. But it was when I, you know, took a leap of faith and combined my passion for the outdoors with my professional skills, and stayed away for work for a year or so, and really kind of found that space where I found my own fulfillment and inspiration. And that unleashed a lot of energy, which I think was key to like finding myself in the space where I am right now. So just that being bold and taking risks and following your gut feeling was I think important on my journey.
Thank you. I think that it's so important that we tackled this in the beginning, just this sense of purpose being the starting point, whether that is a calling on your life that you feel since you were young, or whether, you know, you have an awakening when you move to a new place or you encounter a new setting. There is this crucial element of purpose or passion or willingness to suffer. And what I'd like us to get into in this next segment is to think, you know, a little bit more concretely about what that journey looked like from passion to, you know, to impact, and how you have gotten to the scale of impact to where you are all at now. So my next question is for Chinenye. How can we empower young people to shift from a state of feeling very overwhelmed with the problems and everything and the conditions that they're in, to a state where they're feeling capable to step up and begin solving problems in their communities?
Thank you so much for that question. I think it's beyond just the passion. I think it's more of, you know, a liberation of what one wants for themselves and what one wants for their community. Every young person, or let me use the phrase, every young child that have grown up in Africa has seen an evolving situation, from how we've lived to our communities, to our surroundings, to the things that drive change and impact. And I think that you don't need an extra spectacle to see that you would not, you know, things would not change if you do not rise up to the occasion. You cannot enslave a mind that knows itself. You know the challenges and you know the problems. So when you think about those challenges in a holistic perspective, I think the question one is to ask yourself, what can I do? You understand? And for some people, it's getting an education and coming out of college and, you know, joining an organization that is changing and enabling the world. For others, it is going on that entrepreneurship journey and looking at that problem that they are going to solve, or that idea that could, you know, create employment for the people in their community. And for some, it's just by being present. We have grassroots entrepreneurs that are, you know, held on deep, you know, in their communities and really doing so much and have scaled up their initiative and scaled up their ideas. And when you think about the overwhelming factor where you feel like, oh my God, today I don't think I can continue, I think that's part where you remember why you started in the first place is the only single reason that could get you going. And when you think about that, then you think about who are the enablers in your community? Who are your support system? For me, it is my partner. For me, it is my friends. For me, it's my mom. Sometimes I feel like I can't do it anymore. I just need to give her a call and be like, okay, so I think I've beaten more than I can chew. I don't think I can go on anymore. And you just need to have someone to speak to. And that brings you back to the professional work. Who is your mentor? Who are your coaches? Who hold you accountable to that vision and that goal and objective that you've developed for your organization? Like, who holds you accountable? And for so many young people, like when you think about your ideas, your profession, your work, people think that it's all about them. You can't do it all alone. You need to identify people that you can work with. In the beginning, you might not have the funding you need to scale. In the beginning, you might not have the people with the necessary skill set. That is where you need to tap into your brother community. Now we have social media. Unlike before, in the days when I'm sure when Matai started this whole fight, if she had social media, I'm sure she would have had a massive campaign bigger than Black Lives Matters or any other campaign for that matter. But right now we have social media that people can really, really, really tap into and use that as a tool. You go on social media and find young people having conversations that are not really relevant to how they want to thrive in their community, to how they want to change the world. But you have that single tool. You have your phone 24/7. What are you utilizing it for? For me, that has been my biggest tool. If I need to meet the president today to have a conversation with him and I do not know how, I go on LinkedIn, I go on Facebook, I go on Twitter, because I know there is someone there who can connect me to that person. And there is no harm in asking. If they say no, thank you, next time you find someone else. So that overwhelming situation comes from not knowing what to do. But then if you are able to take a chill pill, like relax, and look through all that you have available to you, you would realize that the solution to that problem, to that stress, to that, and it also comes from wanting to do so much in so little time. So you break it down to steps. I have to-do lists, sticker notes all over my room, my office, everywhere. Where I put it down, I put some sort of like a date. And if you do like you want to end everything today, you won't get anywhere. So I think in order to overcome the overwhelming, to wrap up all that I've said, is number one, find your support systems. Find people who can hold you accountable to your word and to your work. Find people who really like what you're doing, who go beyond just liking, but who really kind of like feel like what you're doing, you're really making an impact. I think those people can support you. Utilize the simplest tools that you have in your disposals. Social media is one of it. Facebook, Twitter, even TikTok, Instagram. You'll be surprised at the people watching all you're putting out there. Even in your WhatsApp, sometimes I get people respond. I'm like, wow, how did you get my number? Like, I didn't even know you were there. You get it? So we need to kind of like know ourselves and identify how we can get people who are around us to continue to enable us to scale and to grow. Thank you.
So there are people in the chat that are loving what you have said. Thank you for breaking it down. I feel like I need a morning motivation video from you so I could just play Chinenwa every morning and get ready for my day. Because you, I think, have this clarity and this confidence, and I want to get into that later. But thank you so much for breaking that down for all of us. The next question I have is for Michael, and this is getting into the challenges a bit. So quite often young people have been framed for the challenges they face and not for the solutions that we bring to the table. How do we lift the barriers to enable young people to participate effectively? And how do you think that we can shift that framing or change that narrative a bit?
Thanks for that. And I believe that youths have so much energy. And what I feel for any youth out there is, how can you channel that energy in the right places? Number one, as youth, we have the solutions, but it's that confidence that's been mentioned already. We lack that confidence to speak up. And it's because what history has shown us is that, we've been seen as reckless, or we don't know what we need to do. I feel that we need to be examples to fellow youth, because some of the youth really stand out and they understand so many things, but they need to be examples to other youth who are even starting off. We need to also have, be solution driven. There are so many challenges that we are facing in the world today. And we must be vulnerable enough to fail and then start off again and again and again until we succeed. By, looking at the culture that has been there, when you get successful, remember that you need to transfer your knowledge. I think we need to have that at the back of our minds, that it is not the success for my own self, but for others. Then if you share those lessons, and you share those lessons of your positives and your negatives of how challenging the road has been, it becomes much, much easier. Looking at how, many organizations are there that are youth-led, the missing link often is the collaboration. We need to collaborate and partner. We are grouped together when it comes to resources. So if you have access to resources, I could be your collaborative partner to help you move forward. And we would be able to go further as we channel our energy in the right way, because we can plant the trees, we can grow the trees, we can do the follow-ups, we can do a dance-thon, we can do a marathon, we can do, we have the energy. And that's what I want to speak to mostly is how do we channel our energies to work together? And that's the way I see that we can lift the barriers. It's not someone else who's going to lift the barriers for us. It is us by working together and, you know, making it happen. Yeah.
Thank you for that. There's so many people in the chat. I think that what you mentioned, which is it's not for us, but it's not for yourself, right? It's for us in the collective. And that's why I'm so grateful that you're all here for this conversation, because we don't share enough with each other. And really, the fight shouldn't have to be as hard for each person, right? Like we've learned.
Mm.
And so, yeah, I think it's about paving the way for each other and building on each other's successes. And, you know, if we get that right, just think about what African youth can accomplish, even in the next couple years, just bit by bit. So, yeah, very grateful to have this conversation. And hopefully this is a starting place for many future actions to come. The next question I have is thinking about how we engage beyond with each other and with other platforms and with people with different, resources and power that we might need. So Florian, it's evident that young people are not waiting to be invited to the table. Example here, working to provide real-time solutions for other young people to thrive. But this does not deter us as a society to support young people more and to constantly remind them that they're a part of the solution. It doesn't mean we don't need platforms to be creating space and uplifting the work that we're doing. So how can we continue to ensure that we are building the capacity of young people to contribute and to be at the front and center of the solutions, not just in our youth communities, but in the global community and sphere?
Great. Yeah, thank you, Selina, for that question. And maybe just a second to explain what OneT.org and the World Economic Forum is. So we are essentially like platforms that are offering space for, in the case of OneT.org, for like the global restoration community, including obviously youth, to engage and to collectively, as a movement, as a society, to really reach the goal of conserving, restoring, and growing 1 trillion trees by 2030 in support of the UN Decade on Ecosystem Restoration. So we are building those platforms, and public servant leadership is like, at the DNA of what we do, and the type of values which are being portrayed by our leadership. And so it all starts with listening to the needs of youth and other stakeholders. So in today's case, particularly the needs of youth, and having many conversations, and understanding what are those common and shared needs and that we all have to increase our collective impact and that collaboration that Michael has just referred to. So what we are offering as part of our work, is like those type of engagement processes anchored in the needs of youth, and also against the background of obviously an understanding of what we can offer as an organization and as a community. And there, we like to communicate about the needs of youth. We like to celebrate and surface innovations driven by youth, innovations for and by youth, ecopreneurship, and the generation restoration that we need to see emerge and strengthen this decade. So we like really that platform and convener anchored in listening to the needs of youth and harnessing our collective networks to help accelerate and amplify. So it's we are not the ones obviously who do the action on the ground, but the promise we make, and I think that also many other platforms should make, is that deep listening, because it's not about our own egos. I mean, egos are helpful as well, but we need that ecocentric leadership, which is based on our shared needs to really make sure that we take care of the planet, right? I mean, that we build a sustainable future. So there are some common threads here, and it all goes back to really listening of what we're hearing and asking the right questions. So what are your challenges? What are your needs? And then do that internal reflection work. I think that's the type of roles that we are trying to play.
Thanks so much. I have a follow-up question. Maybe I'll ask this after I get to Wawira, but I'm curious if in the next segment you could think about, what has prevented platforms from doing this in the past, or has there been a shift or a change, and what do you think has shifted? But before I do that, I kind of want to get to the next question, which is getting a bit more real about support, because you've created your foundations, your organizations, you're having the impact irrespective. But Wawira, I'd like to know, what exactly do you think young people need now to feel supported? And also, do you feel supported?
That's a really good question, Selena. I think that it really ties in together the conversation that we're having and the questions that have been asked of the panelists. And I've really enjoyed listening to their responses, because I think that in terms of what I feel young people need to feel supported, first of all, as Michael mentioned, is those platforms that bring people together, that bring collaboration, that enable young people. I think there's a lot of talk about access to funding, but also finding out how much is actually going to young people, how much is actually going to groups of young people. For example, here in Kenya, we launched many youth funds or funds targeted towards young people, but kind of like having understanding of how much of this is actually being deployed to young people and what is the impact that is having. So I think one of the things I'd say, like in terms of support, is the first thing is, first of all, young people are not homogeneous. We have different interests, we have different things that we're working on, and kind of understanding that young people are diverse and have different interests and also deserve to be respected, listened to, and invested in, as valid as those interests are. So first of all, I think that support needs to be tailored specifically to young people, if it's an individual or if it's groups that have come collaboratively, depending on the areas of interest. So for example, in the environment, there are young people who are interested in terms of environment conservation. I am in the food space, in agriculture. There are young people who are interested in the agriculture space. So having, support that is tailored towards different interests and also towards different levels. And I think that support, first of all, is funding, which is really key, because I think sometimes we talk about funding and, we say that's a really nice thing to have, but it's really, really important for young people to have access to capital to be able to bring their ideas to life, and also mentorship, because you could give a young person $1,000, but they need mentorship to be able to know, how do I use this $1,000 effectively to, for example, grow my initiative and be able to, have the results that I envision. And I think for me, you asked the question of whether I feel supported. I'd say that at the beginning, I had to be very intentional about places that I would find the things that I'm mentioning. For example, funding, for example, mentorship, because I found that sometimes, and this would be my advice to young people, is you don't have to go to every space. You just find something that is very targeted based on what you are interested in. And also find spaces, first of all, that give you the support that you need. If you need money, be clear about that and say, I need money and I'm going to find spaces that give me money. And I need mentorship, because don't just get money without mentorship. I think those two really go well together versus just getting money and not being, especially when you're young and starting out, kind of building the operational capacity of your organization. So I'd say those are kind of the things that I'd say as the key things in terms of helping young people feel supported.
Thank you. And I really appreciate what you said about clarifying your needs and also likely doing that, prioritizing which ones are important. And I think this connects back to that feeling of being overwhelmed, that if we're really able to be clear, this is the impact I want to have, these are the specific needs I have, right now, and therefore I don't need to engage with every platform. I need to be able to address and meet those needs. So this, it's a lot to ask, but it is a bit of strategy. It's a bit of thinking about our lives, the skills we have, the networks we have, and really mapping out how that all connects to where we want to go. So there's a lot of positive things happening in the chat. So I just want to say that, before we end, that everyone should make sure to connect with each other and read over what's happening. And the next question I have, this one's to all of us. And this is coming back again to probably the reality of many young people on this call or those in our communities. And that is, what is your message to any young person out there who might be feeling inadequate, inexperienced, or feeling as if they don't have all the answers? and therefore, don't see a pathway for suddenly offering a solution. And so how can we challenge these assumptions to change the narrative for them? I know, at least for me personally, there was a large portion of my life where I thought, okay, let me put my head down, study, learn, and eventually I will have some knowledge which will enable me to have the right to speak on this, or to come up then with a solution. And I that is not the way to think. I mean, the second that left my mind, I was really able to be resourceful, to think about strategy, to make an impact in the present. So I want us to talk about, sure, the practical barriers, but also, some of these that are a mindset shift, and how are our own minds really preventing us from taking a step forward. So I think, Michael, if you have a response to this, what would be your message to that young person out there that may have been you?
Yeah, that was me a couple of years ago. And what I'd say to my younger self is start. Michael, start. Keep trying, repeat the above. Start, keep trying. Then now you have failed, and then now start again and try again. What happens is that, the opportunities are there. They are all around you to provide solutions. You might just be on the solution that doesn't drive you the most. For 7 years, we did tree planting activities, and that's what I called it. But the moment we started focusing on the schools program, everything changed. We started seeing results. We started seeing impact. And if we didn't start there, if we didn't start with making mistakes, we wouldn't have started in itself. And what I'd say is that, funding, don't lie to yourself. And I'm saying the truth, that the funding is hardly accessible. And, we have not received funding for so many years. And the funding we get is a couple of thousand shillings here and there. But what we've understood and now know is to use the little that we have in the best way possible. So luckily I've been able to work, but also fund my organization. And sometimes people think things just happen overnight. It is my 10th year of keeping on. Whether I'm working, whether I'm in consulting, whether I'm doing other things, I just keep going because I know where my heart is leading me to, and I know what I want to achieve or what legacy I want to leave. Wangari Maathai left a seed in us, and that's just what's growing. So I'd say to anyone, just start. Don't wait for the money. Don't wait for the funding. Just start with what you have. Yeah.
Thank you. That's very, very clear. I almost need to put it up on a sticky note. To just start, try, fail, repeat. Chinenwa, what would be your message to any young person or your younger self?
Oh my God. A message to my younger self would be stop being entitled. The world doesn't owe you anything. Wake up and do what you have to do. And irrespective of whatever it is that you're seeing happen around you, be consistent. I think that's where I connect to what Michael is saying. It's my 12th year doing this from school and now. And I must say it's actually last year that I actually got funded for something that I was very excited about. But people have been seeing the journey and the work. They'll be like, oh, she's doing this with WEF today. She's doing this with Mastercard Foundation tomorrow. She's in this event talking, and they feel like your account balance is, blue, green, and purple. And they won't realize the hard work that goes into all of this. Some days we have to take public transport. Some days we have to go to a friend's house to share internet. Some days we have to go to bed without food. Young people are hungry. And when you're hungry, you can't impact. Don't lie to yourself. So you need to, first of all, find something that gets you to the point where you float. And that's where you can utilize your skill. What skill do you have? Do you know how to draft documents? Do you know how to write a proposal? Do you know how to have a conversation? Look at a business model in everything that connects to you, because that's the only way your business will succeed and grow. And no organization wants to fund a business or an organization without no form of impact. So you need to get to the point where you push it to a level where it looks, forgive my language, I'm talking to young people, sexy enough, where they would want to engage with you. You understand me? Where they want to see some level of impact. You can't just create a proposal and you're sending it to everybody, like mass sending, BC, PMing everybody with it, where they ask you, okay, what have you done over the last 1 year or 2 weeks? And it doesn't even connect. So let's build impact and push ourselves. We have Google. This is free art. Google. Ask Google for everything that you're looking for. There's tons of opportunities, tons of funding. You don't need $250,000. You need 1,000. You need 200 to start with. Buying that material, paying that friend something to help you with their business plan or something. Because I feel like we young people, we feel like the world owes us something. No. We owe it to ourselves to be that different so that the next generation that would come would have a support system like no other. We have me, we have Michael, we have Wariri, we have Florine, where they know that we have laid the foundation for them, and when they need any support, they can plug back on us. I wish that 10, 12 years ago, I knew a lot of things that I knew today. Only God knows where I would have been. But we have the opportunity to reorient our young people, to start working beyond what they can see here to what they cannot see. And that's by using the things that are intangible to make massive impact that will transform their lives. So that's what I'll tell my younger self. And also, I'll encourage them to not give up. There are days where you feel overwhelmed and tired. Just go and sleep. It works magic. When you wake up, you have a fresh mindset to really kind of like think about what you want to do and how you want to go about it. So,
amen.
Thank you.
I mean, the claps are coming through in the chat. People are asking, where's the podcast? So we can listen to this every day. Thank you. Is it coming?
I think I'll consider the podcast. I'm actually seriously thinking about it.
Oh, I'm serious. Let us know when it happens. Because that's what we need to do, is to be able to share this consistently with each other. Yeah, this is incredible. And I think what you mentioned, which is hard for young people to come to terms with sometimes, because we're so focused on all the barriers. The world is not set up to support me. There's no funding available, that we don't really look at whether we've built a track record that is worth funding, right? And so unfortunately, it's not the type of world where an idea that you have, a group of friends that you have, and suddenly you can get funding to implement an idea, right? And so part of it is us getting to terms with how the world works, how we can build impact. And, yes, that's not ideal, but that journey is really formative in building our capacity and our strengths and our capability, so that you are ready in that moment where you have that opportunity that you always dreamt of. And so that is something we spoke about in the last webinar, where we said, young people don't necessarily have trust, but trust is built when we demonstrate competency, when we are consistent, when we're authentic, we ask for help when we need it. And so really embracing the try, the fail, the learn, and then leaning on people as much as you can, because you cannot learn the way the game works on your own. And so I just want to echo what Owira had said about mentorship and funding coming together and preparing yourself for that moment. There is so much goodness that's happening, and we still haven't had everyone answer the question. So Florian, what would be your message to the young people?
Yeah, thank you, Selena. What a great conversation. I mean, I'm getting inspired here as well. So thank you all in the chat and on the panel. Also actually on the topic of trust, the message I would give to myself would be, don't be afraid to commit. I clearly had that fear of commitment, and once you commit, you also experience, or I experienced, how much this can free up energy and just like be freeing up yourself, and it's actually nothing to be afraid of. And so I think that's also actually goes back to building and earning trust within your network, and who in your network are the people that you maybe want to have a particularly good relationship with, and you get a sense for that. But just on that notion of trust, I think, 4 elements that I also recently learned about, the kind of the trust framework, because trust is not something that you, it's not an either or. I mean, that you either have in somebody or that you don't have in somebody. There are different layers of having trust and trusting somebody. One is you earn trust by your own capabilities. So know what your capabilities and your skills are, and and apply them. And secondly, it's about communication. So how do you communicate with people? That's essential to building up trust. And thirdly, it's obviously agreements, right? You make an agreement and you stick to it, and that's how you build trust. And the third one is that commitment, that you do commit to something, or a good friend is having a hard time, you're there for your friend, and that's how you build up trust. And I think that's just also that message. Sometimes you talk of trust as something that you either have or you don't. I don't think that's the case. And in so many other elements also, let's not think in terms of either or. That's not how the world works. It's a both and. There are plenty of paradoxes. We have to embrace those. We have to embrace the complexity. As leaders, we also have to communicate with simplicity. And I think that's something which is terribly important given the challenges, the complex interconnected challenges that we face as a society. And lastly, Michael, I couldn't agree more. Just start, right? Just do something, because if you don't do something, you never do anything. Also, and we all have different energy levels, but allow yourself also some patience. So things evolve, things mature. It might not be today that you have it all figured it out. As Michael, you have said, you fail. So I think that also just goes back to being okay with being patient.
It's crazy actually how, so Lisa Merton just shared in the chat that Wangari Maathai used to say, you have to be committed, you have to be patient, and you have to be persistent, which is just so much of what you're echoing right now, Florian. And yeah, I see someone who's saying that they're leaving today a new woman on that trust framework. So thanks for sharing that with us all. I believe I'd like to hand to Awir. I don't think you've shared with us your message to your younger self or to those out there.
Yeah, thank you so much. I think that, the panelists have shared most of what I would, also advise young people in terms of start where you are and with what you have, the trust framework, and also, the persistence and the commitment to what you're doing. I think for me, one of the things that has really shifted my journey is kind of having a framework where I don't define anything as a failure. Everything is a lesson. So kind of like seeing something as, instead of shifting it from your mind, because when I started out, I was so afraid of failure, especially if you've gone through the kind of like African type education system where they drum into you need to get an A through, and things like that. And you're always afraid. I was an A student through school. So I was always afraid of like, what if I become a B student or a C student? And I looked at life that way. But life isn't exactly like that, because there's no final grade, for example, we're getting. It's a matter of you're doing this well, you're learning from this other thing because it didn't go so well. So defining from the framework of ABC kind of performance and kind of seeing it as because I think a lot of people are afraid to start something because they're afraid they're going to fail at it. But if we change the framework to, I'm going to learn from this, then it becomes, the worst that could happen is that I have a really cool lesson to go home with from this experience. So that would be something that I think I could share with other young people, and that I would tell myself when I was younger, sort of changing that framework from a failure. So, it's never a failure, it's always a lesson. That everything that happens is just a lesson for you to learn, and you kind of just collecting data points on what works and what doesn't to continue with life. Yeah.
Thank you so much. That's so powerful, because and this is something I struggle with constantly. So I want to better understand, like, how did you create that shift, that framework shift in your head from, oh my God, I can't get a B, to, oh, it's okay, these are data points, did it happen in one moment, or is that something you need to reinforce to yourself consistently every time that fear kind of comes up again? I just want to understand practically how people can take that into their lives.
Yeah, so one of the things that really helped me at, around 2016, I was working with a coach, and that's when I was really like growing the organization, starting launching it. And so kind of working with a coach who that was one of my, I'd be physically immobilized by the thought of failing, because I was just like, then it's over. I am not the person I thought I was. And so that coach helped me do the reframe, but it's not something that changed at once. It was something also because, I failed so many times, and I continue to fail in so many things. For every success you see, there are so many other failures it's not really failure. Like I said, for me, it's you do something and then it doesn't work the way you expect, and then you're just like, oh, that's not how it's done. Maybe we should try something different. So reframing that has been from what I termed as failure. And then I figured, Matt, I can't keep punishing myself and kind of suffering through something like this. I need to reframe it for me to be able to learn something from this.
Yeah, thank you. I think what I'm hearing also in that is it's kind of like you have to try, right? Like that message that we had from Michael, you have to start and to try. But if you sit back and you were so scared of failing that you're physically immobilized, you can't do it, then that we build up that fear even more in our head, and it makes it even harder to start. So I guess, part of that framework shift is just starting and trying and building that evidence base behind you that says that actually the failure was not so bad. So I think of it as like jumping in a pool or something, cold water, where you're like, oh, I really don't want to do it. But if you do it, you actually find it's not as difficult as you thought. So we are about to move into the Q&A section. People, I know there's so much that's happened here. I already saw someone say they need to rewatch this whole session because there's so much great content to absorb. But if you have any questions, so that you can get something more specific, or you have a problem that you'd like us to kind of walk through, we'd be very happy to do that. And so I want to kick off. There's one question from Paki Pradeshi, who's asking from a high school student's perspective. How can high school students start their journey? And what do you think could be a goal or a target they can keep in mind to start with? I'm not sure if any of you started your journey in high school, but if you do have some advice to offer, that would be great. And feel free to just unmute and maybe, okay, perfect. Chifina Yenwa.
I think the best thing to do is to look for clubs in schools. I know that, with us, with what we do with Waste to Create, and even right now we're incorporating the startup entrepreneurship mentality on some of these young high school people and students. We have eco clubs in school. I think that's a great way to start. I started my entrepreneurship journey by joining a club in university. So you can imagine how far you would go if you join in school. So find that jet club, entrepreneurship club, something, just get yourself involved with something. It'll really help you. And also look out for people, maybe your teachers, or I'm sure they usually have it now because of COVID. I don't know how that's possible, where you have experts come to school, to talk to students and educate them. You could probably reach out to them. And for some of you who have social media, you can, focus on the people you want to speak to. And I think that will help.
Perfect. And to add to that, sometimes if the school doesn't have a club that you want, feel free to start one. I know that we did that in university, and that was amazing. Like I needed a space to have, international forest, like discussions on global forestry, and we created a club, and that really helped. Wawira, I saw you unmute. Do you have something you want to add?
Yeah, I wanted to say, Chinarano mentioned what I said about joining clubs, because I started also in high school. And yes, our school didn't have clubs. For example, I was very passionate about community service, and there was no community service clubs. So basically I'd just gather people and make them do community service, all my friends, and organize things. So that's something that you could do, whatever you're passionate on and about. And I think also for a young person is knowing that you may change your passions. So you could be passionate about something, and then when you're trying something, you're like, oh, actually, I'm more passionate about this other issue. I'm more passionate about this other issue. So that's high school is a really good time for you to kind of experiment and see what are the things that are making me feel really at home in terms of service, and how can I continue with that.
Thank you. That's a brilliant point, because that purpose isn't always going to be just sitting inside of you. It's so easy to find. It's a journey of trying and exploring. Okay, we have another question, which is how can we involve young people in the diaspora to be part of the growth and movement in the motherland? I'm not sure if there's anyone that wants to speak to this and maybe connect it to your work.
I can answer that. I'd seen it on the question and I wanted to answer. I think that's a good question because the people in diaspora, your roots are here and you need to, I know you come here for either holidays or something like that. The greatest thing you could do is start understanding the issues these grassroots organizations are facing. And then you could help them amplify their voices. And that's in, by social media, because maybe your friends are based in the country where you study in or work in or live, but this is your homeland. The other thing that I've noted is like with the fundraising platforms, like GoFundMe, Indiegogo, all those do not work with if you're locally based. And that's a sad thing, but you could be the person who's the representative of this grassroots organization in another country. And you help even in fundraising and supporting this grassroots organization that's planting trees. And you help them in a very simple way by just sharing the information about what they are doing, their kind of challenges, right where you are. The other thing is, everybody comes in for December holidays, joining in tree planting activities or even in environmental activities, or go help in some follow-up or visit a forest and start highlighting some of these issues, because most of these organizations need so much help. Yeah.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that wants to hop in and add to that Pan-African connection? Yeah, Shini and Ma.
I think also usually there used to be some diasporans who are interested in exchange programs. I know you guys have internships and holidays. Come home and reach out to intern with small scale impact driven organization instead of looking for the big ones. We can pay you all the internship stipend that you want, but we are sure you can have fun, learn. So I think that's one. Two, I know that most of our organizations have websites and there is support system. We want representation across board. For me, I've had some organizations reach out from Kenya saying, can we have a waste equator hub in Kenya? Can we have a waste equator hub in Morocco? Can we have a waste equator hub in New York? If you think you want to drive something, partner with some organization and let's set up something like a chapter. Because the challenge that we will face is no one that is only to Africans. We also have people in the diaspora who want to talk about how they can make an impact in the environment, how they can support their community. So let's not duplicate, but let's replicate our sustainability model and create impact that cuts across. So that's one way I think they can also.
Thank you so much. So I'm going to have a bit of an unconventional turn here in the middle of our Q&A because we have another panelist and just a speaker who can come in and give us even more insight. So I would love to welcome to our lovely stage Alexandria Villaseñor, who is an American climate activist living in New York, maybe in California now, not really sure, and a follower of the Fridays for Future movement. And she has been the co-founder of US Youth Climate Strike, founder of Earth Uprising. You'll see her on Twitter all the time. Thank you so much for joining us. We are having such a great conversation and would just like to hear your perspective, right? As being actually one of those high school students or young people who found their passion kind of early on. What has that journey been like for you? Is there any message you want to share for all of us today?
Yes, first of all, thank you so much for having me here today. It's great to be talking with all of you. It's quite early here in California. It's 5 a.m. where I'm calling in from, so it's good to be up bright and early. And so, yeah, I first got involved in climate activism from a very young age. I started when I was 13. And so I originally got involved after seeing my hometown be disrupted by wildfires. I'm originally from Northern California. And so after a trip back here when the Paradise Fire happened, which was one of the worst wildfires in California's history, I decided that I had to do something and take some sort of action. And so on December 14th of 2018, I decided to go on School Strike for Climate in front of the United Nations headquarters in New York City. And I ended up striking every Friday all the way up until the beginning of the pandemic. So that's almost over an entire year of striking every Friday. And so since I started striking, I ended up going and launching an organization called Earth Uprising International, and we focus on climate education. And so that is one thing that I found is so important, is educating young people on the climate crisis. Because when young people feel empowered and they talk to each other peer to peer, it's so important to take action. And so this is in solidarity with Greta and the Fridays for Future movement and all of the organizations, because Earth Uprising also focuses on building this movement and just bringing more people into it, whether it's in Earth Uprising or if they find another passion or way to take action in the climate movement.
Thank you so much for sharing. I will probably have a little bit of time to get deeper into that. What we've been discussing today has really been about some of the barriers. How do you move past being really overwhelmed by the scale of the problem to feeling like you can take action that's meaningful? We've had some really great advice, but I just want to honor the fact that we have some people who have raised their hands, and I want to give them a chance to ask the questions. So give me 1 minute. I think Dewa P, you've raised your hand. If you have a question for the panelists, feel free to, I think, unmute and ask it. I'm not sure if we have that capability. I'm hoping so. If not, there are some additional questions that have been submitted in the chat that I can kind of share. And one of them is about imposter syndrome. So is this something that you battle with in the professional environmental space? And what is your best remedy? Maybe like one piece of advice on that. Florian, maybe we can ask you, since you've had some more time to maybe work on that in life.
Well, that's an excellent question. And personally, it's funny, but I really trust my gut. And you're not always right, but when there have been recent experiences where I felt like this doesn't totally feel right, and then instead of just thinking yourself about it, draw others into this, or like get perspectives from others, explain the situation, and you will get help from others to see whether there is some dishonesty happening, and we all face this. We all face this at some point, and it's also, I think, important to give people the benefit of the doubt as well. So be open-minded, but there will be moments where you will have to turn away from something because it's against your principles, your values, and we talk about collaboration and partnership. So that's also a matter of leadership, to have the guts to then turn away and turn you back. So I think I would not try to discover it only yourself. It starts with like your experience and your gut feeling, but then draw in your trusted peers, colleagues, and mentors to find out, to basically get a grasp of the situation.
Perfect, thank you. Does anyone else have a good piece of advice they'd like to give someone on imposter syndrome or not feeling like this space is yours?
I think that one of the things that I've had a lot of imposter syndrome myself, and it's just, and then maybe last 2 years or so that I've been able to overcome it more than I used to. And I think that one of the things that helped me kind of, again, reframing is around, you go to a space and you feel that you're young, you're talking about something that sometimes people don't understand as much. And, for example, if you're fighting for the climate, you might have opposition, whatever you're doing, you might have people who want to say something that, is not very productive in that conversation, or you feel that, who am I to be speaking up for this, for example. I think that's something that has helped me, is kind of understanding that, your voice matters, and internalizing that, not just using it as a tagline, that we say young people, your voice matters, but sort of internalizing that I am a young person and my voice matters. And so in a space when I'm speaking, it's important to feel that, I am here and I'm saying something that is going to contribute to this conversation. And also, I think sometimes, you're in, for example, Florian is at the World Economic Forum. I remember feeling like an imposter in Davos, and being at the World Economic Forum and feeling like such an imposter, but also having very, unique, interesting conversations with people once I got over the fear. Because what you learn is that everyone has something to bring, and you also have something to bring to the table. And so it's important for you to kind of like have that confidence within yourself, knowing that everyone's kind of like winging it and everyone's saying what they feel is right. And you have the right to say that as well as a young person and be listened to.
Selena, apologies, because I actually just misunderstood the question. So I'm gonna reveal a language barrier here. So thank you. So yeah, so I face this quite often. From junior career position at World Economic Forum, you're surrounded by those most brightest mind of the world, and can feel quite intimidating. And I felt quite a lot of stress sometimes. And you want to come across like a smart human being. And it also made me go back to university, because I felt, man, I want to learn more about that. They all know so much about it. And over time, I felt that confidence and support from my team and my colleagues to also just say, well, it's okay not to know. I mean, I saw some of the most senior people at the World Economic Forum saying, I don't know. I mean, you can always ask a good question, but just don't try to pretend. I think that's generally, it's a dead end road, and because you might always get a tougher question afterwards. So rather ask a good, intelligent question, and it's totally okay not to know. I mean, we all don't know, and that's how we build conversations and progress. So really would encourage all of us to be humble, and also just not pretending.
Thank you so much. That really helps. And I think it's good to know that even, yourself, you struggle with that and have found a way to think about that. If there's any advice, I think, Shannon, yeah, do you want to go?
I think with imposter syndrome, it varies, right? I feel like some people really think that you have to be like the evil genius in every field, or even in an opportunity where, for example, being amongst. I remember when I had to, like when I got the email, anytime I get an email invited to speak at no event, I go and read their bio, look at their accomplishments. I'm like, hey, I'm in trouble today. Maybe these people bring the technicality, but I realized that what always wins is the originality of what you know and the experiences you've had in your entire work process. You don't have to come and start speaking the biggest of grammar for people to think you're making impact. I think impacts come from the relativism to what you do every single day. And especially in the environmental space, it's like every day new things are coming up. So you don't even know how you're going to keep up with the terms, with the, everything's like it's changing. So why don't you pick an area that you think is focused with? And if you don't know, like Florence said, please say you don't know. I always say that, like, this is the first time I'm hearing this word. Can you please enlighten us? I've never seen anybody that has been shot dead for asking a good question. So asking a bad question, there's even nothing like a bad question. So with the imposter syndrome comes from your ability to be comfortable in your own skin. Be comfortable in what you know, be comfortable in the ideas that you have. And when you don't know, ask. And really, like, when you feel like you don't even have to speak, you can just probably move it to the next person. And maybe when the other person speaks, then you're even inspired to even add on something. So in our work, especially as young people, we tend to want to always be seen as the one who is all over the news, the one who is like the best. Even with me, sometimes I stay away from speaking opportunities, from any outdoor or any outspoken. I just want to join programs like every other person and listen and learn, because the learning always continues and you always need to continue to enable yourself with knowledge and information. So yeah, that's just my own experience.
Thank you so much. That's so helpful. We are nearing the end of this time. which is unfortunate. But what I want you to do is, I will take one more question from the audience. Also, in the meantime, if you want to ponder a really good question in the chat, which is what book would you recommend, potentially on leadership, feel free to pop that in the chat so people have that book recommendation. So Kaushik Pradeshi, I would like you, if you can, I'm going to help you unmute. And if you have a question you'd like to ask us, feel free to go ahead.
So hi everyone. I'm a high school student right now, and many a times many things interest us, like say climate change or women's issues, or many a time children's rights. How did y'all figure out that you're passionate about this thing and y'all started working on it? Because like we can't literally decide that let's go with this or let's go with that. Every day we have new things. So could you tell us, how did you figure out?
Yeah, that's a great point. Even the environment and climate, it's such a big, like how do you find your space that you feel like you can contribute? Alexandria, would you like to comment just because you've joined us? We'd love to hear from you.
Yeah, of course. Usually that's a great question, and I get asked that a lot. And usually what I tell people is to find your climate story. So how are you being impacted by the climate crisis? So for me, seeing the wildfires here in California, in this past year, we've had our first gigafire, which has never happened before. And so I'm seeing effects in my own community. And so we are seeing the effects of the climate crisis all around the world right now, and people are experiencing it in different ways. So look into your community and see how you're being specifically affected by climate change. And so that's your climate story. And from there, what do you want to do about it? Do you want to take some sort of direct action? Are you angry about what's happening and just want to go out and protest? Or do you want to work on creating policy in your own community? So go out and find an organization or a group that focuses on whatever mission that you want to do after finding out, what makes you passionate. And so climate story, and then just get involved.
Thank you so much. I think that really helps clarify and speaks to that purpose element that we touched on earlier. There's room for maybe one more person to respond. If anyone has burning thoughts while we're at.
A little bit. Yes, maybe I can add a little bit to what Alexandra said. When I was in high school, as I said, I was doing community work. I was passionate about girls' access to sanitary towels. I was also, volunteering at a local hospital. I was doing cleanup. So I was doing a lot of different things in terms of, cleaning up the environment, volunteering at, a cancer ward here in a hospital, doing different things that I felt were important to me. And something that I think that helped me hone into the work that I do right now, which is nutrition work, was kind of combining, I kind of identified that I do want to work with children, for example. So identifying I do want to work with children. I'm also very passionate about schools and education. So kind of like finding your story, how it weaves into your passion. So for me, education was something that, was woven in from my story through my parents. So finding out what are the threads to you as a person, like Alexandra said about your climate story, seeing how is it personal to me. And then also combining that, what I did was combining it with education. So I did a degree in nutrition and food sciences. So kind of bringing in all these passions of kids, of nutrition, of food access, and, and bringing them together to now do the work that I do. So I think it can't be something that you find out overnight, but it's something that you should try lean into where you're feeling more pulled towards and where your story aligns. Because I think everyone has a unique story, and that brings out their passion. So for example, if your story, education has been really central, or, like Alexandra said about climate change and seeing how it's affecting her home. So kind of seeing how that weaves into your life and then leaning into what you think is interesting and sorting that out internally.
Yeah, and to add to that, I would say, someone had asked, how do we pick between two passions? I would say don't, because that's one thing I learned later on in life. I always felt I had to pick. So I used to sing all the time with my sisters, and I felt this strong call on environmentalism and climate work. And now at this moment in my life, there's no reason that you should just have two. And so think about the diversity of experiences that enrich your life and how you can bring and blend the two. And so, yeah, if you feel strongly called, I would say keep doing it. I mean, people are serial entrepreneurs and they'll jump into new fields. That might be you, so don't limit yourself. We are coming to the near at the end of our time, and I see that Chinian wants to answer a question in the chat, so I will hand the floor to you, and after that we will have closing thoughts from each one of our panelists.
Okay, thank you. So I see a question, someone asking, how do I, just quickly, I'm trying to find it. Okay, how do you ask people to pay for your, pay for a service? Like maybe you have a skill and you want to bill people for it. I struggled with that for a very long time. I felt like I wasn't that good for people to pay me for my service of either coaching, mentoring, or even advising or consulting. I thought I wasn't the best for a very long time. And this is what I started doing. So for everyone I have any meeting or session for, I ask them to make a donation just to start with. And I was surprised at the kind of donations that were coming in just to continue to support me to learn more and research. I mean, to get data to be on the call or whatever. And it started from there. And before I know it, people started asking, do you have like a pay slip for a 1 hour session, with you or something? And I was like, wow, you really want to pay me for this? Okay, why not? And I created a bill list. You can start from a small figure. And, for some people, when you give them maybe $20 per hour, you're what more than $20? I'll give you $100. So you can start from there. That depends on a skill-based service. But then if it is a project or a company, you need to look at quite a number of things: cost of production, cost of coming up with the concept, the time that you put in and all, and just politely say, this is something to support for me to continue to do my work. And if they say no, it's fine. If you still want to go on, if they say yes, that's totally up to you. Thank you.
Thank you. That is really valuable, very important, because too often we do everything on passion and energy, which runs out at some point. So don't burn yourself out in doing this work. Also, someone said they pay for access to the podcast, Chinian. So we are expecting that to come. All right. I hate to close this out, but we have to. So many good lessons from this conversation. There isn't necessarily a final question that I have. I feel we've touched on so much. But if there's anything, maybe a final message you have for the participants, if there's any, piece of advice that you've been telling yourself, perhaps this week, this year, this month, that resonates with you right now, if you want to share that, that would be great. So I will hand it to Michael to kick us off.
Thanks. I'll be brief. I think one thing we must understand as young people, as the present people and the people on this session, and I'd like us to be spurred to action. The one thing I do know is that our world needs us. It needs us more than ever before. And we cannot just afford and to be that generation that sat back and watched everything burn. And I'd like to challenge everyone on this, or whoever will eventually watch this. I urge you to act on that idea that you have and start something or start doing something. I challenge everyone to, you've listened to us, you've listened to what we are doing. Start small, start a nursery, start an activity in your community, host a tree planting activity in your locality, or even just plant a few trees. I think the action call is now. And that would be my parting shot to you, because we need so many people to join us to safeguard our world. And the work is cut out, as there's so much we need to do, even if you began just here in Kenya or from wherever you are, we need to act now. Yeah.
Thank you. Florian.
So I think, as we're also asking about, how to get started and how to develop your initiatives and startups, etc. My final piece of advice or thought would be, rather than focusing on selling what you want to get across, again, listen to the needs of those that you would like to buy into your idea or startup or product or whatever it is. You will get so much further. And it might not be a linear process, but focus on meeting real needs rather than selling what you want to sell and what you want to see thrive, right? You want to develop things that are meeting needs And that starts with listening to what people really need.
Thank you, Florian. Wawira?
I think that I would echo what Michael said. My challenge would be start something. From this conversation, I've seen the comments and people are feeling, encouraged, which is really great. So I would be very excited to hear. And if you start something from this conversation, tag us, let us know, and that would be very exciting to see.
Yes, that's a great point. Alexandria?
Yeah, it's an honor to be able to jump on here and see everyone this morning. And I think that I want to close off by asking everyone to look into the future with me as the world prepares for COP26 this November. So this upcoming convening of the world leaders is really weighing on me because of the dire state of the planet. And so we're all going to need to put pressure on our world leaders to take bold, big action on climate change. And we really can't wait for action anymore. And so I was at COP25 in Madrid, and that was a really big failure. And the planet cannot afford to let that happen again. So I'm asking everyone to join the youth movement and putting pressure on COP26 to come to an agreement and change the course that humanity is currently on.
Thank you so much for uplifting that opportunity for young people to really presently make a big difference in terms of how countries are aligning on climate change action globally. So yes, I completely echo that. We have some time until that meeting at the end of this year, and let's make sure we make the best use of that. And lastly, to our new podcast host, Chinayetwa, would you like to share your final thoughts?
I think you guys have to hold me to that podcast thingy. I really think you guys need to push me, like I said. But for my last words, there's a quote I stumbled upon, I think sometime 3 weeks ago. And it's written by Wangari Maathai. Actually, she says, there are opportunities even in the most difficult moment. And it is for us as young people to spearhead what that opportunities would be in the different areas. And I think all of the speakers have said it all. But one thing I would like to highlight as we wrap up to the end is that we can, and this is something I echo to myself every day, I can even in the most difficult moment, I can even when I don't understand it, I can even when it feels like it's not connecting and nobody really feels like what I'm doing really makes any form of impact, because sometimes you get to a point where you can't hear anything else, and all you can hear is yourself and struggling with whether all this energy, all these people that I'm pulling together are really following the goal and the objective. But I think that as the driver of change, you know that you can, and that's the most important element. And let's connect with each other. There's Twitter, there's Instagram. You guys have asked, once you put any of our names on Google, you try typing Flora in there, you find different ways at which you can connect with him. So connect with us, let's hold each other accountable. We can be very busy people, all of us here, but I'm sure that if we can make time, we can liberate each other, support each other to scale and grow. For me, I also need support every day. So all of you, please come and follow me on Instagram and Twitter. Let's echo the message and get a lot more people to join, our change journey. I think that's very much important. Thank you.
Yep, 1000%. Please do make sure to follow the foundation, all of the panelists, their initiatives, their organizations, to continue to be inspired. I also, think it's really important. Thank you for touching on, the messages you're giving yourself daily, because it can, you may look at us and say, okay, well, these are very confident people. They have so much courage, they have so much accomplishments, and just remember that this is a process, I think, for us to build ourselves up every day and to make sure we show up with that level of confidence. So yeah, just remember that we're all struggling in this journey, and it's important for us to share the lessons learned and lift each other up. This conversation has been life-giving. So thank you so much to each one of you for your time, and Alexandria for being up at so early in the morning. But I promise you it's made an impact. And I know that there are people on this call, including myself, who are feeling inspired, more motivated to dedicate themselves, to think strategically about how they build support systems, their specific needs that they have, and to combine Michael and Wawira's points to start, try, learn, and repeat over and over and over again till we build that level of impact. I'm just so grateful, honestly, very inspired. And just remember that this webinar series is going to continue to give that inspiration to us. I hope that, if you were inspired by this conversation, write up a blog, take some of these points, share it with the rest of the world. This doesn't need to live in one form. So I would love to see your thoughts on Twitter, these quotes, LinkedIn, blogs, posts, whatever it is, to make sure that this knowledge is going out to more people. So I hope you've taken